What's up, guys? What's up? My internet finally is fixed. That was a unexpected complication over the last 4 or 5 days, but finally got everything taken care of. Sucks because I wasn't able, uploading takes so much. The videos I upload are in 4K, so it's like you can't even upload those really over data, your phone data. I mean, that has to be connected to like a really good Wi-Fi or something, and so I couldn't even upload videos from my phone because it was so bad. And the internet was just constantly. It was like every 2 hours it would drop all the way down to not having any in it at all. What's up, Canes? Good afternoon. It was 42 degrees at Friday's scrimmage, coldest first scrimmage in Miami history. I had 4 layers on. My God, I mean, yeah, 42 degrees in Miami. That's insane. That's insane. But yeah, I mean, turned out my modem for the speed I was paying for was not was too old. I'd had it for like 5 or 6 years, so we got a new modem. All the cables and stuff that connect down into the house got replaced. The cable that connected to the power line. So actually, the internet's like way better now. So it ended up being a good thing. But it was one of those things. Like I'm pretty good at figuring out what's wrong with the internet and fixing it and everything. And it was a hardware issue. So new modem, new cables, and everything's running smoothly, which is great. But so apologize for that over the last couple of days, or at least the last 5 or 6 days, guys, because just wasn't able to do anything at all. And so Canes, Miami's scrimmages looking pretty good, or what are they looking like right now, according to you? It's funny because like I've told you guys in the past, we are getting to that stage now of the recruiting cycle, especially for, let's say, if you're in the 26 class or the 20, it's 27s. Obviously, you still need to wait till October or August 1st. Zach, what's up, man? Welcome back, Zach. And it's at that point in recruiting, especially for Division I schools, where they're just not incredibly focused on it, which is totally fine. But this is the part of the year where I tell clients, like, do not be don't get into a panic mode because you're not hearing from your school, like maybe a school you've been in contact with all fall and winter. If it becomes a little bit less consistent, don't, again, you be proactive. You be the guy every week or two or whatever saying, hey, guys, they win a big series. Hey, coach, team looked great. You guys, you swept them last weekend. That was awesome. Just saying, hey, you're following the team, you're supporting them, whatever. But don't get in the panic mode if all of a sudden, man, this coach was texting me and calling me every week or two, and now I haven't heard from him. It's like, dude, this is what I try to get across to everybody: is these coaches do not have jobs if they are not winning in the season. Like, recruiting is not the number one priority. The number one priority is winning. Recruiting's probably the second, third priority with development, but like recruiting now with the portal, that's number two. So if they're not winning, right, it's like it makes no sense to put more focus on recruiting. Like, they need to figure out how they can win, especially early on in the season, guys, because remember, those first 20 games, you could get off to a slow start. You could get off to a really good start. But even if it's a slow start, you still have time to figure it out, right the ship, and end up with a really good year. So those first 20, 25 games, you just got to be patient, because they're really, 40 games in, 45 games in, that's when you kind of know, okay, maybe we're not going to have a great year. And then the focus totally shifts to recruiting, right? Because it's just like, hey, we're not going to make, if you're a mid-major, you're not going to make a tournament if you're not really looking good in conference, and you're obviously your season record's not good enough. Unless a miracle happens and you win the conference tournament, you're not going to make it. So if you're a high school player out there, don't freak out if you're not seeing or hearing a lot right now. Kane, the issue I'm having is we have second, third team defense behind our main pitchers, so they're making errors, but it's hard to get the reel because it's not the first team defense. Well, yeah, the thing is, I mean, Canes, you guys, you always do that because now, like, JD and those guys have an idea of what the starting lineup is, so they want their starting lineup to get reps off the best arms. So you're right. That does make it hard as an overall team evaluation. It makes it hard for you to think, okay, how good is our defense going to be? But remember, when your first team defense is in there, they're going to be usually the difference between like your number one defense, which is your starting lineup, versus your second team defense is pretty substantial. Again, in college baseball now, they're like let's just say a plus defender at the position, a guy who like he could go to double A or high A right now at a shortstop, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. That guy is so much better than your average college shortstop. It's not even funny. So your first team defense in there, everything's going to be better, but it does make it harder to evaluate the total team, like you're saying, Canes, because you just don't know, right? There's nothing there. You're seeing errors get made. You just have to understand that errors are going to happen, but they're not going to happen quite as frequently as they do like in an inter squad with your second team defense out there playing behind your arms. That is a tough thing. Even as a coach, when you're trying, the one thing you really don't know, and I've told you guys, Canes, I've talked to you about this and other guys, just like there's some guys who hit really well in the fall and they're the fall American and they, you think this guy's figured out, he's going to be a stud. And then the season comes and you're like, holy cow, man, this guy cannot handle the pressure of stats counting, of the series counting, of it being must win. The same is true in maybe a little bit lesser parallel of defense. There are guys who in practice look like really good defenders, and then the season starts and it's just like the pressure of it being against another team and must win, and you don't want to make a mistake. Guys get in their head, and all of a sudden their defense kind of doesn't look as good as it did in the fall. So the same thing is true. Freshmen cannot play defense, in my opinion. The only one that shows something on defense is the Puerto Rican kid, but even he is making errors. That is, and Canes, you've heard me say this. Every scout I talked to in the summer, because again, you guys know my dad was a general manager for a long time. I mean, he was a front office guy for like almost 4 decades. And literally was in the game from the 1970s until late 2000 teens. Right. And he still could be in the game right now if he wanted to be. Like if he wanted to be in the game right now, he'd have a job like that. That's how highly respected he is and well thought of he is in the game. He's just kind of done with doing that. It's a lot of travel and it's a lot of work, right? So it's just like he's at the age now where he's doing his own thing and he's just like, I'm not going to do it. But those scouts I know who were good friends of my dad and guys that scouted me in high school and in college, and I see them every summer now. They tell me that American-born infielders in particular are getting worse and worse. So, your American-born infielders are not as good as they have been, and it's obvious. It's obvious if you know what's going on in travel ball and development. Why that is. It's because there's not a lot of practice going on anymore. Some kids are skipping their high school seasons or skip their high school practices to play in another game. And all development right now, at least that is at the forefront, is hitting. So kids they're not nearly as focused enough on their defense as they should be. Now they're bought into working on offense, but it's like I said in one of my Instagram reels, I'm like, you guys are all competing for a DH position because your bats are good, but you're not good enough defensively to play any position on the field. And so Canes, what you're seeing is that is a symptom of the root cause, which is that. And I made a video about this a long time ago, but I said basically that, there's that old adage in baseball that which still is true. If your bat's good enough, they'll find a spot for you. And that is 100% true, but there was an understood and a caveat that should be added to that saying that most people don't know, is that given that you're at least like an average defender at your position. Because if you're a net negative defensively, well, then you're weighing the options of, well, he's going to lose us some runs defensively. Is he going to provide enough runs that not only it's a balance, but it's in the positive overall. Because you have guys in college baseball that are such elite defenders, like your guy in center field, Canes, that you're going to take a little bit lesser bat because he's, like an elite center fielder, and people don't think like this, but an elite center fielder in the college game is saving your team so many runs because he's running down extra base hits in the gap. He's cutting balls off that turn into doubles usually and holding them to singles. He's robbing balls at the wall. He's robbing home runs. So an elite defender in center field is worth a lot of runs over the course of the year defensively. So you're going to take what you can get, unless there's a guy who maybe not as good defensively, but he's way better offensively. But so many kids now, they don't have any position versatility because you put him at like second base and you're like, he's in a below average second baseman. He can't, so he's not going to play third. He's not going to play shortstop. And, he runs okay enough to maybe play a corner spot, but you don't see enough. And that's what most guys are going into college. I think freshmen can't play defense at all schools. It depends, right? It depends. But I agree with you in a sense, Canes, that it seems like, I'll say it like this. When I got back to Georgia Tech, when I was done with my pro career and I was finishing my degree and I started coaching, I was blown away by not only how low the fundamentals were for freshmen as far as defensively. Guys had no idea situationally what to do with the ball from the outfield. So like if a guy hit a double, or there's a runner on first, they're trying to throw the guy out at second when they have no chance, and then the guy from first scores all the way because the guy overthrew the cutoff to throw to second, right? And that's just something. And I was a little bit privileged in the sense that I grew up with a GM for a dad, so I knew situations like that because we talked about them all the time. But even your run-of-the-mill like Division I Power 4 player in like 2008, 2009. You didn't have to coach them on that stuff when they got to college. And now that's like the main focus in defensive work is you're working on fundamental stuff, relays, cuts, where to throw the ball, which that was like kind of everyone knew that when I got to college. And now you're having to coach these guys way more on that stuff than you ever did because travel ball is just, that's not really what they're focused on. Our second best defender is showing something too at the bat. He's the second team center fielder, also a freshman. I like him a lot more than the elite defender. Yeah, and what you're going to see happen, Canes, is probably that elite defender is going to be given, he may start, maybe not. Maybe it's the guy you're talking about will start. But it's going to be like a tryout. And so that first couple weekends, all right, if he's really like, the thing is this, as long as he's okay with the bat, so he's hitting like 250 plus, you're probably okay with it. But you still may give the other guy a chance to see if, like, man, this guy's going to hit 315 with some pop, and he's a pretty good defender in center, that maybe is more valuable. So I think what you're going to see with the center field position of Miami is you're going to see them kind of have a little competition there early in the year. Buck, what's up, man? Welcome back to the channel. For fielding, besides lack of practice, the other issue is so much travel balls played on turf that doesn't really develop your hands or movement like grass. 100%. I always say the same thing, Buck. And that's what all the scouts tell me. They say these kids are all playing on turf now, and they're comparing it to obviously your international players like in the Dominican and Venezuela. They ain't playing on turf. They're playing on tough fields that you get bad hops all the time, and so they're taking ground balls in the Dominican. You're getting better every time because you're getting bad hops. You're not on the best playing surfaces. And then, like you said, the American-born players are all playing on turf now, so the ball skips. The ball doesn't die on turf like it does on grass. So they don't have to charge it as much. You're never getting a bad hop. Guys, because it skips, they play back on balls. They don't have to come get it. And so they get to college, and all of a sudden, they're not used to playing on grass. They're not used to reading the difference in a hop between a dirt hop and a grass hop because the turf's all the same. So they just have no idea, really. And again, they could be a generally good defender, but it's a huge adjustment going from turf to grass and dirt. And the biggest one I see are the shortstops in high school that get to college and they're not used to grass and dirt, and so they never charge the ball enough. Even a ball tipped pretty hard, you still got to take a few steps, get to it, momentum to first. They don't know how to do that because they're just so used to the ball skipping to them and having all the time in the world, and then guys are beating out singles to the shortstop. Canes, Fabio Peralta. He can bunt really well, which is surprising. Also hitting opposite field singles and doubles. Nice addition by our recruiting coordinator. Yeah, I mean, this is the one thing in college baseball, and I took advantage of it to the extreme, was no one, and I mean no one anymore, base hit bunts. Nobody. When I got to Georgia Tech, we had a few guys that were really good runners, and they, that was like one of my. I had scouts say that they comped me to Brett Butler. I mean, that's how good I was at base hit bunts. It was like it was like my elite tool was bunting for hits. And that's just because I had a dad who knew I was an elite runner, and he's like had me in the cage just bunting, learning how to do base hit bunts all the time. And that guys don't do that anymore because it's not looked as bringing any value, and they don't think they're going to get recruited because they can do that. But if you're a really good base hit bunter in college baseball, you're going to hit 300 easy because it's 15 to 20 extra hits a year if you do it right. And you add that up over 200 something at bats. That's like 15 hits and 200 at bats is like what, 95 points on your average. I mean, that's what it ends up being. So guys do not do that enough. I mean, like I said, I was coaching guys who really could run, and it was like they had never even been taught or tried to learn how to bunt for hit. And it's free. I mean, third basemen are always playing back. They're not great at charging the ball and throwing it on the run in college. And even the thing is, they would play me so far in, it was ridiculous at third base. But now I have this massive hole in the 6 hole that I can hit a hard ground ball past the third baseman and it's a hit. So guys don't think about that. They don't think about, well, if they even think you're a threat to base hit bunt, third baseman's in, shortstop's because you can run, shortstop's probably a step in or whatever from where he normally plays. First baseman's in if you can go both sides. So now you got 2 massive holes on the left and right side of the field for you to take advantage of. He's executed 2 really nice sack bunts. Got to get him in that base hit bunt category. Buck, our Dominican Republic tournament was on grass. Nice field, but we were kicking the ball all over. To your point, the Dominican kids were sucking everything up. I told our coach we need 1,000 ground balls before spring. Yeah, and the thing is, you're probably playing on one of the, I don't know where you were playing the Dominican, but it's probably one of the pro academies like that all the major league teams have down there. So those fields are going to be nicer than like these fields that some of these kids are playing on growing up. Like I said, I mean, it's like grass is kind of thick, so you really got to charge. The dirt's hard in some spots and soft in some spots, so you're going to get tough hops. Like it's the real wake up call when you go from college to pro ball is how much better the infield defense is. And it was most like it stood out to me the most when after my first year of pro ball, and that was just, I got to spent most of that in low A, did really well, and got promoted to high A for the playoffs because I was doing so well. And I came back, obviously off season, and before I left for spring training, I got to catch a couple of the early Georgia Tech games with all the guys that I had played with that were in pro ball now. And we're just going out to watch some of our friends that were still playing and everything. And I see a guy hit a ground ball in the 6 hole. And in my head, just from being around pro ball for a year, I'm like, oh, he's out. That's he's out. It's not a hit. The shortstop not only he didn't even get to the ball, it went into the outfield. So that's how much different the range, the arm strength, the speed with which they get rid of the ball. It's so much better in pro ball that you don't even realize it. You don't even realize it when you're there, but when you go back and watch a college game, you're like, holy cow. Like, these guys are so much better. And so you think about that up the whole ladder of pro ball. That was an A ball. You get to AA and AAA, dude, like every double play is turned. Even for a guy like me who could really run, was like a 3.940 down the line. You hit a ground ball at the shortstop, it's double play. I mean, you're beating out some of them, but they're turning most of them. And any ground ball is an out most of the time, right? And that's why the whole movement was away from ground balls, because the infield defenses are so good that ground balls are just, again, ground balls in college. And this is my whole thing about when the whole launch angle movement, it was all based on Major League Baseball data. And it's like, you're telling kids to just hit the ball in the air. One, if you told me to hit the ball in the air in college, I would have just hit 200. Because I didn't have the power to hit the ball in the air consistently and drive it past an outfielder or over an outfielder's head. That just wasn't my game. I didn't have the power at that time to do it. But the other thing was this: in college, ground balls play, man. Infielders are not great. They don't have great range. I mean, ground balls play in college baseball. So it's all about the context, what you're doing. From Buck, it actually wasn't at an academy, but decent field, which is unusual for the DR. These kids just field balls on every uneven surface all day. Remember, baseball 5 days a week, school 2 days. Yeah. Yeah, that is surprising. But again, like it's like Buck, it's funny because even like a decent field in the DR, for kids that play on turf all the time, they're like, what is this? It's like, it's not even, it's a whole nother realm of, because all of your instincts are wrong. And that's probably the crux of it. When you play on turf for, 4 or 5 straight years from middle school to high school, the majority of your games on turf, all your instincts are based on playing on turf. So when you move to grass and the dirt, your instincts are all wrong. Like the balls you think are going to get to you won't. The hops you think you're going to get are wrong. And I say this all the time to the guys I work with that are infielders. I say, listen, as an infielder, the best infielders never get bad hops, because the best infielders know how to play because their instincts are so good. They've been developed over so many years. They see a ball off the bat and they know instantly where to go to make it into an easy hop, like a Sunday short hop. Whereas bad infielders, their footwork is not good. Their instincts are wrong. So they're always playing a ball. Like you see guys all the time, like if they took one step forward, it's a short hop, easy pick, and it's a routine play. But they take a step back, and now it's that like in between big hop, and they wear it off the chest or the glove or whatever. And nowadays kids aren't even taught to wear it off the chest. They just olay it. They do that, like try to catch it on the side and olay it, and it goes into the outfield. Whereas if you just taken a step to the side, gotten in front of it, you maybe throw the guy out at first anyway. Jonathan D, what's up, Jonathan? Good morning. Appreciate you and your followers. Can you discuss NIL? I'm a fan of mid-major D1. My team is around 25 players in the NIL club account. It's subscription-based. Players create content. Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing with NIL, Jonathan, and again, the vast majority of NIL is coming from your Power 4 schools. So the NIL is kind of like the reward you get for being a top level player, or being at least a really good player at a mid-major, D2, Power 4, whatever. So for NIL, what kids need to understand is like you're not getting NIL unless you're looked at as a guy who's going to be an immediate contributor. So if you're a high school player, there are some schools that are offering NIL deals to high school players. They're generally speaking, they're a lot lower in the amount of money you're getting than a guy they're going to go after in the portal and give like 150. So for me, again, for any kid in high school, the focus should not be on NIL. The focus should be, okay, I need to go to a place or go to a school that gives me the opportunity to play and start making a track record and putting up numbers. And then when you are that guy with numbers and a track record, if you do want to go in the portal, like you're probably getting NIL money, or a really big scholarship. But the goal cannot be, I'm going to get NIL out of high school, because there's just not a lot of kids that are getting that. Now, in 2 or 3 years, is that going to change? Probably, right? There's just going to be more every year. There's going to be more and more money on the table to give out. And right now, what you're seeing with schools is they're using a lot of that NIL money to, maybe land a few really high level high school prospects, but most of it's going to that ace that's in the portal that's going to be a Friday shutdown guy, or that big bat in the middle of the lineup that everybody wants, or that shortstop who's an elite defender with a really good bat. They're going after the difference makers with NIL money. And so it's really hard as a high school player, because unless you're like one of those, like I talk about tier 1 players who you're like a Drew Burris type, or like an elite pitcher out of high school, it's probably going to get draft interest. You're going to offer NIL to those guys because you think this guy's going to come in right away and he's going to be in our starting lineup. There's just, again, you never know for sure, but you're like 80% chance this guy is a big time contributor for us. So if you're outside of that tier 1, which I was in high school, I was like I was barely in the top 500. So I wasn't considered like a top guy. I wouldn't have got NIL money in this climate out of high school. But certainly if I had gone somewhere, I ended up having a great freshman year at Georgia Tech. But I tell guys all the time now, Jonathan, I probably wouldn't have got recruited by Georgia Tech. I was one of the later commits in the class, in my junior summer, and I was a minimum scholarship guy. Back then it was 25% minimum, and so I was not like by any stretch of the imagination looked at as someone who's going to come in and be a star in our lineup, which I ended up being. So it's just the goal should be for high school kids, don't focus on NIL yet. Focus on getting to a place where you're going to get a chance to become a player that could eventually get NIL money, right? Hope that helps. But good stuff. Got to run back onto the slopes, counting the days to college baseball opening weekend. See you later in the week. All right, have a good time on the slopes, Buck. Yeah, I know. Can't wait. College baseball is so close. And it's gonna be so fun. I think one of the things I want your opinion on. I think I may do, like maybe once on the weekend, we'll pick a game as a group on here, and I can't stream the game live, but I can watch it, and we can do like a watch party where we're watching the game, we're talking through the game, what the coaches' decisions are, what the players are doing right, what some players are doing wrong, what I think about it, and we'll all watch the game together. Maybe in honor of Canes, maybe opening weekend, we'll watch a game of Miami and see what we think. But we'll certainly watch, big time series like the A&M Texas series later in the year. That's going to be a big one. We got to watch one of those games. But I don't know what you guys think of that. Would that be something you guys are interested in? Because I can't stream it, or I'll get like a trademark I'll get a violation on YouTube and everywhere. And Jonathan, thank you so much. Yeah, no problem, dude. No problem. And again, Jonathan, like I said, that's kind of where NIL sits right now. But with all these changes going on, and more money is flowing into college baseball every year because the popularity of the sport in general, of just college baseball, and how many people are watching it now, not just in the tournament, but in regular season. There's more and more money coming than ever before. Miami plays Niagara, who made the tournament last year opening week. Yeah. So it's a good, that's the thing about college baseball, guys, is that you have a lot of teams coming down to the South to play in warmer weather. Though if it's 40 in Miami, like not that much warmer, but it's certainly warmer than, where they are up in Niagara. But these early season weekends aren't slouches. Like this, what I try to communicate is like, as a team, generally speaking, most teams in college baseball, even really good Power 4 schools that are projected to make the tournament, like a Georgia Tech, for instance, you're going into these weekends and you're trying to figure out, like, you have a general idea of what your team is going to look like going into conference play, but some guys are not going to perform the way you think. Some pitchers are not going to look as good as you thought. And some guys are going to look way better than you thought when they get a chance. And so it's all about trying to figure out who your team is for conference play. So these weekends, and again, you may get off to a slow start. Niagara beats you 2 out of 3, and you're like, man, how the hell did that happen? But that's the sport of baseball, and that's what a lot of guys are going to be doing those first couple weekends. You're trying to figure out, okay, this is the guy we think is our Friday guy. Let's see how he handles it. And again, your Friday guy, if he's a true Friday guy, these first couple weekends, you want him going maybe opening weekend to just kind of build up his arm 5 innings, right? Depending on his pitch count, maybe 6. And then the next weekend, you want him to go 6 or 7 because you want to build him up. But you also want to see, can he dominate a lineup for 6 innings, 7 innings? Can he get through the third time through the order? Is he still looking good? Because that true Friday guy, like a guy I played with, Mark Pope, it was like complete game shutout, complete game 1 earned run, 8 innings, 1 earned run. And it's like, okay, like this, yeah, that's what our Friday guy looks like first 3 weekends of the series or of the season. And now more than ever, with how offensively how offensively based the kind of the scoring is, like there's just so much offense in college baseball now. The pitching decisions are really the key ones, because you just can't afford to have guys out there that are walking a bunch of dudes. And again, they may look like they had great command in the fall, but the same is true. You have Fall American pitchers, you have Fall American hitters. And so you're trying to figure out, okay, was this guy just a Fall American pitching wise, or is he legit? Was this a Fall American hitting wise, or was he legit? And then you're able to make decisions about your lineup going into that first conference play, because that's where the money really, or where the rubber meets the road. No matter how bad you do out of conference, even if you're a Power 4 school, if you do really well in conference, you're fine, right? If you're over 500 in conference, you're making the tournament, you have a chance at hosting. So the goal for every team, not just Power 4, is to make sure you have your best 3 starting pitchers, your best bullpen guys, and your best lineup to go into conference play. So really, there's 2 goals in these first 3 weekends. It's win every game, right? That's always the goal. But the second goal is, okay, determine who are the guys we're going to war with in ACC play, in SEC play, in Big 12 play, in Sun Belt play, right? And that's what the advantage that a lot of these Southeast schools have, is they're playing a lot of these Sun Belt teams that are really good, that are better than a lot of the other Power 4 schools in certain conferences. So you're getting to face, like a Georgia Tech, for example, is facing a Kennesaw State, who's really good. They're facing a Georgia Southern, who's really good. They're facing Mercer, who's really good. They're facing Georgia State, who's really good. These are all teams that are in really good conferences that are always, on the verge of making the tournament. Even some of these guys, almost year by year, they're like bubble teams to make the tournament, even though they may not win their conference tournament. So you're facing better competition even in the midweek, and it's good for your RPI. It's good for your team. And the best teams are the ones who, those midweek games, they dominate the midweek games. Watch around college baseball, the teams that dominate midweek games usually end up doing really well. It's the teams that are inconsistent in midweek because they just faced an ACC team and now they're facing a mid-major, and the players on the team don't have the right perspective, and they think, oh yeah, we're gonna roll these guys, and then they get rolled, right? Because they don't have the right mentality. The guys I played with in college, our midweek, like our goal was, we're gonna put up so many runs that we're cashing out in the 5th inning, and other guys on the team get to play. We can put our turfs on and just kind of watch the game. And we did that a lot because we had really good offense. Even though compared to today's offenses, like I showed you guys last week, we would have been terrible in this era because of how crazy the ball's flying. But that was our goal every week, was in the midweek, put up 15 runs in 5 innings and let the backups in and play and get to take a break. We're not going to watch it, but if you guys are interested, D1 Baseball has they have a series coming out, or I think the first episode's out, with Darren Vaught, about the Japanese phenom Rintaro Sasaki and his unprecedented path to Stanford. So just a little bit about Sasaki, guys. He has the home run record in high school for all Japanese-born players, all Japanese players in high school. He has the most home runs ever hit in high school. His dad is the head coach at the high school where he went to. And he coached guys like, I think it's Kikuchi and Shohei Ohtani. So this kid comes from a premier. He was going to be he was the number 1 prospect for the Nippon Baseball League in Japan, which is like their major leagues. But his goal was to play in the big leagues, so he decided to go to Stanford. And what a lot of people are saying is, if he does a good job, and he turns out to be a star, which, watching his swing, I mean, he's got a pretty left-handed swing. I mean, he gets on plane, it's adjustable. I think he's going to be a star, just from watching some video of him, right? But you're going to see this possibly start to happen more and more with Japanese-born players whose goal is to play in the big leagues. They may spurn going in to the Nippon Baseball League to come over to play college in the States. And if that does happen, it's probably going to be a slow process, but eventually there's going to be a good percentage of Japanese players in college baseball, right? Have you heard anything from Georgia Tech spring practices and other schools? Yeah, so I have heard from Georgia Tech recently that they really feel like, I talked to Danny DH the other day, and he said he really feels like, he's like, we're going to be young pitching. There's no question about that. Their Friday guy is going to be Tate McKee to start. He's a sophomore. But their bullpen guys are going to be, they have a lot of experience on the weekend. Tate McKee started Fridays last year, and that was probably, it was a little bit of a jump for him. He was really good out of the pen and then struggled a bit at starting. But they're going to have some guys that are kind of, experienced on the weekend, even though they're not proven on the weekend. But really what he said is we're going to have a really young freshman-oriented bullpen, but they're all good. They throw strikes. They got good. They got velo. He thinks they're going to have maybe more velo than they've had in a long time. And it's not just velocity. It's, freshmen that actually have an idea of what they're doing on the mound. And he thinks that's he thinks that's the crux of the season, is if these freshmen do what he thinks they can do, he thinks they're going to be a lot better than people are giving them credit for. And he would tell you, like, that's, depending on a lot of freshmen, that's a big ask. Because just like with hitters, with pitchers as well, like, you have to make adjustments. If all of a sudden it seems like, hitters are onto your stuff, you got to figure out different ways to pitch them, or maybe you're tipping your pitches and you got to figure out what you're doing. Again, that was my role at Georgia Tech. It was like, I'm watching for other teams' pitchers tipping, and I'm watching to see if our guys are doing it. But that's really, I can't say this enough, guys, and I'm going to have something coming out in the future about this, specifically for pitchers and trying to identify what they're doing to tip. It's going to be a program that I'm going to offer to people. But the most unspoken thing in college baseball, and the reason for why so many freshmen struggle in that first year, besides from guys that can't throw strikes or whatever, fall behind every hitter, you're going to struggle if that happens. But there's a very high percentage of players, especially as freshmen, that are tipping every single pitch they throw, and other teams are picking it up, and they're relaying that to their hitters. So you're pitching with the opposing team knowing every pitch you're throwing. And I can tell you this because that was my job, and I found that probably like 80 to 85% of a staff, they were tipping something. So I would watch video before series on every night. I would watch the starter we're about to face, and I'd watch him for about an hour. And I'd watch him in the windup. I'd watch him in the stretch. I'd watch all the different things you watch for guys that are tipping. And then I'd go into the bullpen, and they're kind of their go-to bullpen arms, and then kind of their less used bullpen arms. But I found that with like 80% of them, they were tipping something. Some of them were tipping their whole arsenal. Some of them tipped every time they threw a fastball, or some of them tipped every time they threw a breaking ball. And so you think about that in a hitter's mind. If your best pitch is a slider and he knows every time you're throwing it, it's not that good anymore. Because it's not going to fool him, which is like the vast majority of why guys struggle against off speed, is because they're not looking for it and they get fooled. Now, if a guy knows the slider's coming, he's sitting on it, and he's been taught how to sit on a slider, which a lot of guys aren't, he's going to have a lot more success at the plate. And same is true with the fastball. You may throw 95, but if the guy knows you're throwing a fastball, he's 100% geared up for it. He's ready for it. He's at an advantage. So I think it's never talked about anywhere. No one talks about it. But the biggest reason why guys struggle in college baseball as pitchers is because they're tipping at least one or more of their pitches almost every time. To the point where it's like, I can relay every single pitch, or every time you're throwing a fastball, or every time you're throwing a slider, to my hitters, and they know. So like if I had off speed and a hitter was up, and we talked about this before the game, I would just say, I would yell out as soon as I see it deep, and they knew off speed's coming. Or if it was fastball, I'd say, be on time, fastball's coming. And the tips I couldn't pick up on video, because some of the angles, you're picking up, you got behind home plate and everything. You don't have a lot of angles, even though it's getting better. But I'd also just watch guys warming up. I'd watch guys in the game, and I'd usually be able to pick up something in game as well. So I'd usually be able to pick up one or two tips total on a pitcher that we were facing. And it's as easy as that, guys. And so pitchers go into college baseball and they think it's all about, well, my stuff's good. I got a good slider. I throw strikes. Why am I throwing a 7 ERA? And it's because, well, your best pitch was a changeup and you tipped it every single time. And that's a guy that I coached at Georgia Tech. His best pitch was a changeup and he tipped it every single time. Even after I told him multiple times, just subconsciously, he could not break away from him tipping it. It was so bad that I told him that a team was relaying, because I'm watching third base coach, and he's a right-handed pitcher, so he's facing the third base coach when he comes set, and the third base coach would be looking at second base. If second base is where I'm looking, every time he threw a changeup, he'd come set, he'd go like this and look to home plate. So after about 3 or 4 times in a row, I'm like, okay, he's got him. He's got him. He's got his changeup. I tell the guy, he gives up 3 runs, but it's like second inning, so he's staying in. And I say, dude, you're tipping, you're flaring your changeup. Your glove is flared so bad. Just when you go back out there, purposely flare it every time, or purposely squeeze it every time, so they think it's a fastball or whatever. Whatever you do, you got to do it the same every time. Well, he went right back out there and he's doing it exactly again, because as soon as his brain gets away from focusing on not tipping, he's focused on picking up the sign and picking up the glove and throwing the pitch. He's doing it. So what a lot of you guys don't know is that is the game within the game that goes on in every single game of college baseball. One is, all right, you as a staff are trying to pick up tips on their pitchers, but you're also trying to figure out, all right, do they have anything on our guys? And you're listening for cues. So at Virginia Tech, for example, when I was coaching for Georgia Tech, we discovered very quickly that they were relaying, the pitches to their hitters. And one of the things they would say, I think if it was off speed, you would hear them very late after a guy had come set. They would say, be ready. And it was very obvious. I think it was off speed every time, or it was one of the others. And so we knew as a staff, okay, they have something. We got to figure out what they got. And we have to, make an adjustment or get the guy out of there, because you can't throw a guy if you can't figure out what he's doing and he can't fix it. You're basically just throwing the other team BP because they know what's coming. I'm hoping we have guys doing that. You have taught me a lot about the game within the game. I would say this, Canes, pretty much every Power 4 school, and it is a skill. Like, you can't just take a coach and say, hey, go pick up tips. Because I've been around guys where I would pick up something, they're like, what? What are you seeing? I don't see it. And to me, it was like clear as day. So it's one, you have to develop that eye for it, and you have to be able to see the subtle differences in a glove shape, or a way a guy comes set, or if he's looking down when he comes set, or he's looking at third base when he comes set, or if he's looking at home plate when he comes set, what movements he's doing with his glove while he's coming set. Is he doing a lot with his glove, and then he sets and it's a slider, and then when he comes sets with a fastball, he's not moving his glove at all? Or he comes set with a changeup, he's not moving his glove at all. So there's so many things. There's an infinite amount of things that guys do, and it's my belief that everybody tips. It's just a question of, can you pick it up from the dugout, and is it good enough that you can relay? So like if you're in the dugout, it's a left-handed pitcher, and you're on the third base dugout, you're not going to be able to pick up anything. You're going to depend on your first base coach to have the eye and be able to pick up stuff and then relay it to the dugout. So he might make a sign at first base that relays to the dugout what the pitch is, and then I'm relaying to the hitter. But certainly if you don't have coaches doing that in the Power 4, it's going to be very hard to win. I'll say it like that, because I think it gets underappreciated how big of a advantage that is for your team. I think people look at it kind of as like gimmicky, but I can just tell you my last season at Georgia Tech, we're in the ACC tournament against Louisville, and Luke Smith, the famous guy who did in the College World Series, was yelling expletives at the player when he struck him out. His best pitch was a changeup, and I had it every single time. And we actually ended up walking off and winning that game because the guy at the plate, I relayed changeup. He had a base hit in the left field. We ended up winning the game. So it's things like that. They actually, if you're really good at it and you're able to relay it successfully and players actually trust you, it wins you games. Like it's worth, I mean, a really good guy in the dugout, I think, is worth like 7 or 8, maybe 9 wins in a season if he knows what he's doing. Texas is plus 1,100 to win it all. How we feel? Good question, John. I don't know if I want to be giving gambling advice out on here, but they're a good team. I'll tell you that. They're a good team. For those of you who don't know, plus 1,100 means if you bet $100, you win 1,100. So it's basically you're getting 11 to 1 odds that they win. Kane says ACC will win the title this year. I hope so, man. I hope so. I think the ACC, as on par with the SEC as it is, SEC certainly has dominated the College World Series wins in recent years. Even though the ACC has done a good job, obviously, with Virginia winning it that first time. But the ACC, that is something that they need to do to kind of not be looked at as kind of like not the little brother, but just like not quite on par as the SEC, which that's kind of true in some ways. But certainly ACC's got the teams to do it this year. SEC has the teams to do it this year. So, but if you follow 11.7, those guys over there who do a great job, their idea is that every 8 years, a mid-major team that's preseason ranked in the top 25 will win it. And they predicted it last year, but they forgot in 2020 we didn't play a season. So it should have been last year, but since we didn't play 2020, actually this coming year is the 8th year. And so it could be a mid-major team that wins it this year. John, North Carolina State is a sleeper team, I think. Yeah, I mean, reading the thing, we went over their season outlook, John, last week. And my thing, it looks like with them, is their bullpen is going to be really good. Starting pitching should be solid if guys make the necessary adjustments. They even could be really good if they make good adjustments. The offense for North Carolina State is the question mark. A lot of question marks offensively. But with Chris Hart, they're coaching the hitters. They're probably going to be fine. He's one of the better hitting coaches in the country. So they should be good. I do think they're going to be solid. Their biggest question mark is the starting pitching and the offense. And if you just get one of those two, right, with a really strong bullpen, you're going to be a good team. The best teams have all three typically, like Tennessee, for example, last year in the top 5 teams. But if you have 2 of those, you're a regional team usually. If you have two aspects, bullpen, hitting, and pitching, and then your defense is I'd give it as well. But as long as you have solid, the thing is this, if you're a really good pitching team and really good defensively, you're going to win. If you're a really good offensive team and you play good defense and have decent pitching, you're going to win. But the better pitching team is usually going to be better because hitting's harder than pitching. Just a fact. Think they will actually suck. Canes. That's not a bad. The thing is this: North Carolina State, in my view, either goes one of 2 ways. They either overperform because they have a lot of question marks in the lineup, and all of a sudden their offense is really good, and they're better than being like preseason number 13 or 14, or maybe it's 12. But if it goes the other way, they could be out of the top 25. If the offense is just anemic in this era, if you have an anemic offense, you're in trouble. Because everybody's scoring like 7 runs a game. So if you're anemic offensively, it's tough. They have nobody, certainly offensively, it's a lot of question marks offensively. I think Miami and Georgia Tech are higher than NC State. And this is the thing, and Canes, you're right about this. In the ACC, if you're in that top 40 team range preseason, if you're in the SEC and the ACC in top 40, anything could happen, right? You could turn out to be a top 10 team. It's just a matter of the guys, and this is generally speaking, unless you're a top 5 team preseason, which means you got a pretty loaded team. If you're outside that top 5, it's all about, okay, the guys that we needed to step up, do they step up? The guys that needed to improve from last year, did they improve? And ultimately, the teams that overachieve, it's just because more of the guys that they had projected were going to make jumps and adjustments, make them. That's it. You're going to have a few guys that, man, we didn't think he was going to be counted on this heavy, but he's been great. The teams that have a lot of those, and I do think with NC State, they do have a lot of opportunity there to have guys step up offensively and in the starting rotation. They have stuff in the starting rotation. Just overall numbers from last year weren't huge, but they do have a lockdown bullpen, so they may do it where starting, get to the 5th inning if you're a starter, and then we're going to go bullpen, right? And that could hurt them down the line, but Georgia could make Omaha 100%. I have more faith in Cuvée and Burris willing their teams to better seasons than North Carolina State. That is true, Canes. Like when you're playing around two guys in Cuvée and Burris, who are, two of the best players in the country. Burris and Cuvée are going to be battling for ACC Player of the Year this year. You are right in saying having guys like that in your lineup makes everyone else around them better, as long as they're leaders and they hold guys accountable. And from what I know of Burris and talking to the staff, I mean, he's that guy. Like he's taken on the leadership role. I think he was voted a captain. And when you have a guy that's like all world on your team, you feel like we're better than maybe you even are as an offense. And so I do think you're going to see those teams offensively perform better than expected because they have that guy, that nucleus in the middle of the order that is kind of the constant. So I do think it's a chance, but again, it's like anything can happen. We just have to wait for the season to start and see how things roll. All right, guys. So that's it for the day. From now on, our streams will be around 12:30 Eastern, just so you know. That's going to be the new schedule. But great stuff today. We'll be back tomorrow. Canes, one last thing. Cuvée crushing it in first 3 scrimmages, toying with the pitchers. Yeah, it's always amazing those guys that have a great first year. When they come back and they're like even better, it's like, man, what is this guy going to do? So it's going to be exciting to watch Miami and Cuvée, what they can do, try to prove people wrong. And same kind of true with Georgia Tech as well.